Have you ever been hit by a change that you felt like you couldn't overcome? Or maybe you've bought into that old expression that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I think we've all been there at some point, and it's easy to just give up. But today's guest is going to share with us how change actually empowers your professional journey. So, what if we stopped seeing change as a disruptor and started seeing it as the plot device that helps us write a better story? Because change is storytelling. I'm Jonathan Jordan, your storytelling coach, and this is Everything is Storytelling, a podcast for people obsessed with story. Our guest today is Loren Greiff, an executive career strategist who helps executives over the age of 40 land high-earning and high-influence positions. She speaks candidly and frequently on the topic of ageism in the job market and how executives can leverage change in the story of their career. So first off, Loren, I just want to repeat what we were just talking about. I'm so grateful that you are here today, especially with everything that's happened back at home, and we're glad that you're safe.
Thank you so much. Safe, happy, and super grateful to be here, and just the little things, right?
Right. Yeah, you have to have gratitude no matter what situation you're in, because what's the other choice? Sitting around and wallowing?
Just not me.
It's not you. Yeah. And so I think in some ways this is a really timely discussion because you're having to personally deal with a really big change right now. and that's true for your clientele that you work with too. So yeah, I'm definitely really stoked to have you here. I've been following you for a while on LinkedIn. I love your positive attitude that you bring to your work and to the conversations with your clients. So I thought maybe we could start off, just for those who aren't familiar with you, to hear a little bit about your backstory of how did you end up specializing on over 40 career transitions?
So I'll be really clear. It was not part of my initial thought process when I launched my business about 4.5 years ago. I am the founder of Portfolio Rocket. And what ended up happening is the majority of the folks that we were working with already had accumulated 25 years plus of work experience. And so naturally, it became an offshoot or a byproduct of their career that some of the biases in the marketplace, I mean, some of them are even, how long you've been out of the marketplace. That's a bias right there. But also the common through line, the one that kept coming up over and over and over again, is this idea that they would talk about, sometimes even as if it was like chicken pox, like, oh, I have ageism, that's what's happening. Like, that's why I'm not getting hired, because at this point, I am considered somebody who is too old for X. It could be too old in the world of technology. It could be that I can't necessarily, the perception being that I don't understand tech. Some of the old ideas had been part of the process, added to the ever-present process of working with recruiters who have their own level of biases, and or the applicant tracking system, which is another whole area of concern for most job seekers anyway, even at younger years, because you can't control the filters, and the filters for every company's applicant tracking system are different. So you don't know as a layperson, okay, where are the filters turned up? Where are they turned down? How can I actually get through in light of all the tonnage of applications that are already coming through to begin with?
Right.
So it just became a natural offspring, and also any good coach, any good marketer, any good business owner has got to understand the needs of their clients and their audience. And so it was very easy for me to partner with this audience in terms of, okay, it's not just about career transition and the strategies there. We really need to factor in the things that are specific and potentially barriers for you getting to where you want to go.
And I'm curious too, as far as the clients you serve, are most of them in their transitions, are they only looking for a transition in terms of title or income, or is it also they're even switching industries?
Great question. So Jonathan, there are like, transition is almost like an umbrella, the way that you could say ice cream.
Okay.
And there's so many different flavors and lots of different mix-ins that come into each and every one of those transitions. Career transition can look different, but one thing that is more and more common in terms of the transitions that they talk about is, first and foremost, I want to matter. I'm no longer interested in a job. I need to feel a greater sense of purpose. I don't want to just end up either going through the motions or white knuckling the way that I was grinding in previous positions. It matters to me that, and this is a term that we've talked about repeatedly with a lot of our clients, is I want to be skipping to work on Monday. I want to have that pep in my step that I'm like, I can't wait. I can't wait because I still love to work and I want to continue loving my work. So the mission or the purpose is at the top of that hierarchy.
Right.
And so they're moving from this job kind of idea that in many cases was never in alignment with what they had, but for whatever reasons, either fell in their lap or they chose to be there. And coupled with this idea of mission and purpose is also part of the change. It could be from one industry to another. It could be a title change. I think that's also, it's not uncommon. But I also will say that in many cases, it is not about the compensation. Sometimes it is, but in many cases, again, they're willing to sacrifice a huge level of cash or equity for more time with their family, more ownership of the things that are important to them, potentially volunteering or other areas that help them level up to their version of what the mixture of career, life, time, and their personal values all add up to. So the way that jobs look today and the way that careers look today is a very complex cross-section of multiple things. And for each person, it could be extremely different. But as I said before, the one thing that is the most common through line is a greater sense of purpose.
And that is such a big deal because it's something I think people think about a lot more, especially in the past, what I've seen in the past 10 and 15 years, there's more of a discussion around purpose, especially within work, whereas that used to be more removed. Like you have purpose in your personal life, right? But work is work. It's kind of siloed off. And I do think everyone is kind of tearing down the wall between that idea and saying, no, my work needs to matter too. I need to contribute. So that totally makes sense that you're seeing that among your people.
I also will say, just in conjunction with how they got there, they've suffered consequences. It could be burnout. It could be being a road warrior and missing their kids' basketball game or dance recital. It could be a variety of things. It could be health issues. It could be just that they worked and then somehow were let go. And all of that so-called loyalty or alignment with this organization that they made personal sacrifices for did not level up to what they had expected. So they could be feeling a level of betrayal or resentment, like never again. Like, I don't really want to do that again. I got to take care of myself this time and not just give everything to an organization who could potentially take advantage of me. And I'm not signing up for that again. You know, I've done that, been there, done that. I'm out.
Yeah, no, that's so good, and better late than never to have that wake up call. I have a client right now who he said something recently to me about how the company doesn't pay for your tombstone, right? Like they're not they're not going to be putting it on your grave. Like they're not going to be putting your accomplishments at the job on your tombstone. Like they've moved on from you by that point.
That's haunting and true.
It is. Yeah, it is. So speaking still about your clients,
Mhm.
because these are people who are facing, again, a transition in their personal story.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you just covered it a little bit that it's like flavors of ice cream. Everyone's different. But is there a challenge that you see come up more frequently than others? For instance, is it the mindset issue of they feel stuck where they are? Or is it something more external like ageism? Do you see one more than the other?
I'm so glad that you asked this question. I think about this a lot. Uh, I do. And I would say, as of today, it's about a 50-50 split.
Okay.
And the reason why there are these two, at times, competing factors when it comes to change is because, as I referenced before, right? It's complicated. And our brains and our mindsets are really struggling to make sense of where we are right now, when a lot of the anchors and the root structure has now been ripped up. My
Mm,
identity was tied to this. I had this structure and or schedule. I mean, I'll never forget, there was a client not too long ago who was in the advertising industry for over 20 years at a huge company working on a big luxury watch brand, to go unnamed. And he was in the C-suite and he said to me, I just don't know how to reconcile going from the C-suite in the corner office to driving carpool.
mm,
Like, I don't know how to be that person on a regular basis. Sure, you know, I can help out my wife every now and again, but to be doing this, it's hard for me. And I feel some level of loss and shame around that part of who I was.
yeah.
So part of it is the mindset, but the mindset also has a very different piece, not just from the identity standpoint, but from understanding that, and this is a question that comes up, this is something, a phenomenon that I honestly can't even begin to put my arms around, because it's so pervasive and it's almost diluted if I tell you this, because it's more valuable if somebody in the marketplace says it. The marketplace and the hiring market has changed
Mm,
dramatically. So part of the mindset is saying, oh no, like, not only am I feeling a little rudderless over here for all these other reasons, now I got to wrap my mind around how to approach this whole process and the landscape completely differently. And I don't know if
mm,
I want to change, right?
yeah.
Because what I was doing, that's all I know. Not that it's necessarily working, but that's what I know. And
Yeah.
so that's the first half, right? That's where that first area of concern is for our clients. And I want to say, for anyone, regardless of what level they are in, or regardless of what age they are, anytime you're going through any kind of job transition, career transition, some of those things will play out.
Mm,
The other
yeah.
external areas of change are way too long for us to cover here. I'm just going to focus in on the top three. The first is that the nature of hiring is not a passive process, which when I say that, what I mean is you can't just go out on LinkedIn. I mean, you can, of course, it depends on if you want any activity. You can't just put your profile up there and, expect that all of a sudden all the phones are going to be ringing and people are going to be all
Right.
excited about talking to you. Your network isn't going to be tearing down your door day one. So that you have to be able, the way that we frame it is move from wait to create. I've been in this waiting stance. We call that either the victim posture or that passive recruiting process where you're just kind of like thumb-de-dum-de-dum, you're whittling your thumbs and you're wondering why it's so quiet.
Right.
And on the flip side of that is what opportunities can you yourself create? And that's really where we focus. Not to say that those other things won't happen, but the likelihood of more opportunities coming to you is just, it's almost a guarantee that if you are working over here on creating, and at the same time, there are other forces that are driving, opportunities to you, that's great. So we want to create a bi-directional flow. So no more of this, hey, wait and see what happens.
Right.
So that's very important. And it's a hard habit to break, because even though it may not be working, it being the applicant tracking system or expecting recruiters to find you, it's a habitual behavior almost as strong as or as consistent as the way you have your coffee every day, right? You do the same thing over and over and over again. And it's, in many cases, maybe you don't even know what else to do.
Right.
It's hard to understand that there's actually a need for a strategy that is there. And people talk about that, right? You need a job strategy, but it's like, okay, great. Like, what's that?
Right. Yeah. Can you give me the recipe, please? So how do you have certain strategies that you employ to help clients make that particular mental shift from I'm going to sit around because I'm so great and people are going to find me, to I'm going to actively be the farmer who is planting the seeds, and then while I'm waiting for those crops to grow, I'm also going to go out and do some hunting, right? Like it's a different mindset. So what do you employ to help them start to make that internal change they have to make?
Sure. I want to just back up and also put a little bit of context around this. So I spent about 10, 12 years in the area of executive and executive search, recruiting, headhunting. There's so many overlapping areas. And part of the reason why I left was because I had a great concern around the passivity of the process. And I knew that even though people were in our database, of course, not everybody in our database gets placed, like they still need to come to the table and be the number one choice in the client's mind. And as a recruiter, when I was in that seat, I did not have any time at all to help people navigate through their particular areas of change. As I mentioned to you earlier, like you can't go into an interview with a lot of filler words, ums or ahs, because that's not going to help your case.
Right.
As a recruiter, I could not coach through that. I was not able to coach through things like content or how to curate your feed on LinkedIn or how to negotiate or how to even tell your story with key metrics. So all of those things became part of what our program looks like today. So we have created a structured program where our clients and everyone we work with knows what there is to do at this particular phase, why each phase builds off of itself, and how to cut time in the marketplace essentially in half. So the average executive search takes about, it could be depending on the time of the year. Right now, we're about to go into holiday. So, it would be it's not unheard of, but we want to also factor in that things might be slower, the same way that they're typically slower historically for 30 plus years over the summer. August can be slow. So we cut that time between 4 and 7 months versus 12. So we want to
Wow.
be sure that because there is a way to keep things moving and accelerating, that also helps to build so much positive momentum around hope, right? It can be a hopeless experience. Nobody's calling. It feels like crickets out there. I keep getting rejected. And so we want to keep that momentum moving so that when you are in front of said decision maker, networker, that could be a referral inside a target company or any other company that you want to talk to, that your energy, your vibe, your key storytelling, that's the impact that they walk away with, that's what they remember, that's the contagion in the room that says, I got to have this person talk to this person over here. So we want to make sure that we're preserving both the time it takes for those clients to get into their next aligned position, and also that they are doing it with a spirit of excitement, inspiration, and a sense of vibrancy that says, it doesn't really matter how old I am. Like I'm on it. I'm into it. You'd be crazy not to hire me.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said a minute ago about teaching them to tell their story with some key metrics, because you're teaching me right now, because that's something that I need to get better at a lot of times. Like, I'm so obsessive over ideas and what they can teach people and the storytelling process itself that sometimes even when I meet with potential clients, I forget that it's just as much of a story to be able to say, hey, here's how many books I've worked on. Here's the type of topics that I've covered. Here are the ones that got a bestseller status, right? Those are parts of the story as well. And sometimes it's so easy for us to forget that data still matters, even in a storytelling context.
I really like to frame it like this because I think it makes a lot of sense and it's very simple.
Yes.
So metrics telegraph, right? And they're shortcuts. People can remember those here, there, and everywhere. But as you become more senior, and everybody in their world is we're all aging. We're all aging right now as we speak. But as you are in interviews or in networking conversations, you have less time to speak to more people with fewer words. So the words or the metrics that you use, they gotta count.
Yeah.
They've got to count. They're almost like your flavor nuggets.
Yeah.
And so you don't want a lot of filler in your foods because you're looking for more of the flavor. And so we want to really extract out those key areas so that they leave conversations and the listener or respective decision maker is thinking to themselves, that was a great conversation. She really knows her stuff. I think she's cool. I could imagine, hanging out with her, but I think she'd be a great leader because I was taken by not just the information, I was attracted to the inspiration behind and moving forward with the information.
Yeah, it's a balance. You have to have both, because if you're only information, then you sound like a robot. You're just rattling off things. Still have to be a human, but it's that balance of here's the story, but here's also the proof. You got to have the proof as well to prove the story is true.
Exactly.
That's so good. And I love that you are teaching people that, because it is better preparing them for, again, a job market that's very different than what they got into originally. So even if the last time that they had a really serious interview was around 2000, the world is so different than it was back then.
When the listener, hiring manager, person who's networking is on the other side of your story, what we know is that there's a lot of considerations factoring through their head, thinking, can they persuade my board? Would that team who's been really difficult, would they be listening to this person?
Yeah.
You know, how is this person going to be able to negotiate for something that would be very unpopular, maybe with some of the people that are multi-generational? So there's all different considerations, different types of audiences, different and competing agendas. So this is something that we are able to distill down in a very simple way. And just so you know, what do I always say? I say this a lot. Video don't lie. So we have our clients videotape themselves. They hate doing it, but they love to see the progress. So
yeah.
This is a tool. This is a free tool. You can do this. You can check yourself. Audience out there, video yourself. Send yourself a Zoom. You can use this in so many ways and save yourself so much angst to prepare in advance.
Yeah, that's such a good tip, because I remember a few years ago, the first time I ever had to do a video interview for this company, because that was part of their process. It really was anxiety inducing, because that I'm not about that. I don't love looking at myself. I don't love being on camera. Like, there was a reason I stopped acting a long time ago and started writing. I wanted to be behind the scenes. And so it was a challenge, but thankfully I had as many practice goes as I needed.
Right.
And you're right.
Nobody needs to see it. You get to do it
Right.
like in the privacy of your own kitchen if you want. I mean, do it wherever you want. But
Yeah.
it only gets easier. And I applaud you so much, Jonathan, for bringing this to YouTube and bringing this out there so that you are eating your own dog food, right? You are essentially doing everything that you are subscribing to other people, right? Keep practicing, keep doing it. And here I am, I'm doing it with you, and you can make it fun, especially if you're doing it with somebody who's just as interested and ego-less about the process as you are.
Right. Well, and I tell people same thing with when they're writing books, whether they're doing it themselves or whether they are being ghostwritten, is read the material aloud. Because you're going to catch yourself with the weird wording if it's your own material, when you're thinking, man, I thought that made sense on the page when I wrote it, but now I hear it out loud and it's so confusing and I need to fix that sentence. Or if it's something being ghostwritten for you, is it actually in your voice? Use your voice, read it out loud, and then you'll see, oh, that's not the adjective I would use right there. So I'm going to change it to this or that. But that's one of my biggest editing tips I give anyone is if you're able to, then you need to read aloud your writing, and you're going to feel like a goofball doing it, but it will make it better a lot
like that
faster.
Emoji.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's been times I've been back here in my office and I'm just reading material aloud, and my poor wife, she's not coming back here because she thinks I'm in a meeting, and it takes her a while to figure out, like, I realize you're just reading to yourself at the moment. So but that's such a good tip for the job market too, is have that practice interview, watch yourself, and would you hire yourself essentially based on what you just did?
The other thing that I do say, and this is so uncomfortable, but I have to say it.
Yes.
I heard this at a recent conference too. Fix your face.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Your face is communicating so much. So
yeah,
your face is telling a story, and you want it to be a good one.
Yes, and that's so good for someone like myself who, again, I have to think about that. Like, what is my face communicating sometimes? And vocal, tone, right? That's a big one as well too, of do you actually sound excited? Because you might be excited on the inside, but you've got to be able to show that on the outside too. It's such a big deal. So we were talking about this a little bit before I hit the record button about how obviously the people you are serving, again, they are over the 40 mark, which again, I feel like I'm racing towards that. But what's interesting is I feel like there's also a little bit of reverse ageism that can happen sometimes. I experienced that in a job one time where they put me in charge of technology because I was the youngest person on the leadership team. And Loren, I'm actually not that good at technology. Like I have to Google things all the time. I was like, why are you adding this to my job description? And they literally told me, Loren, they said, well, because everything you own is Apple. And I'm like, yeah, I own Apple stuff because it's easy to use. I don't have to think about it. So anyway, story for another time. So I would love for you to give some advice for people who are below 40 real quick and
Mhm.
who are thinking about making a career transition because maybe they're finally waking up to I'm in my early 30s or mid 30s even, and this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. But
Mhm.
how do I start to make that change in my career trajectory? Like, how do I embrace that idea of change?
Like, thank you. Thank you. You just like literally threw me like the kind of ball I love to catch.
Good.
There is a real thing, and I just want to put a buzzword around it just so that you have it, since you are
Yes.
a lover of words. It's called youngerism.
Ah,
So
okay.
youngerism is equally ageist as you
Mm,
experience, like the perception that because you're young, you're the guy all of a sudden. Oh my
yeah.
goodness, that's horrible. Without even checking with you, you know, really.
Yeah. I was
So
like 25 and they just added it to my job description without a meeting.
So regardless of what age you are, and let's just say
Mhm.
you're in your mid 30s, or and you're thinking about making some kind of change. Maybe it is across industry, or maybe you are looking to augment something that you're currently doing and expand in another area. Maybe it
Mm.
has nothing to do with what you went to school for, because that happens a lot too, right?
All the time.
I don't
Yes.
understand. I went down this path. I have my law degree and I never want to be a lawyer ever. At the end of the day, and this will hopefully distill it down to the thing that really matters the most, what I would really want to know, and the advice I would offer your audience, is what problems do you love to solve that you want to
Mm,
continue to solve?
mm.
So I'm just going to use this as an example because I think it's relevant. It's relevant to you. It's relevant to me. Anytime you're in an industry, you're not one of one. It's not like I'm the first executive strategist in the whole planet, right?
Right.
Nobody cares either, because the world's not looking for another coach. There's 23 million coaches on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So if I just throw out a title, it's like, right? Like, who cares? What does that mean? So I really want to know what problems you solve. If it's around something that has to do with strategy, what kind of strategy? You have to train your audience, because left to their own devices, they won't be able to decipher the kinds of things that you are talking about that are so, so important, and also in many ways so close to you. Your interpretation, your understanding of what that is like speaking Greek to them.
Mm,
So you're in charge of translating. You're in charge of translating from what to what. And now I want to know why, right? Why are you doing this? And what will change for you and the company when you get over there? So they want to know what your areas of problem solving are, why you're uniquely qualified to do that. And if you have no experience yet doing that, I would strongly recommend you borrow against other transferable skills, because we work
mm.
with also a lot of folks who are industry agnostic. And they're like, I don't need, I don't know, I'm not like somebody who only wants to stay in healthcare or only wants to stay, in retail. And so then
Right.
you have to find the through lines. For example, if you're a revenue driver, who cares what industry you're in? If
Mm,
you're somebody who's great with building efficiencies, Who cares what industry you're in? We have to be able to thread that through the examples that you use, and maybe in some cases downplay industry if you are industry agnostic,
Right.
and amplify the key outcomes that come from that transferable skill that is going to go with you no matter where you are.
Mm,
So I'll just wrap that up, right? What are the key problems you love to solve that you want to continue? Because in a transition period, just so you know, you get to put the ones that you don't want to do in a trash masher,
mm,
right? You don't have
yeah.
to carry those with you. And just because you have the skill, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this, I want those are more or less check the boxes. I still want to know the problem you solve, not necessarily the roster of a laundry list of all the things you can do, because now you're just going to confuse and lose. Key
That's
problems that you solve, want to continue solving. And then what I really want to know is why is that important to you?
right.
Why is it important to them? Why is it important, and what will change for them when you get in that role?
That is so good and so encouraging, because I think that problem solution stories are some of the most powerful that can be told. And I think for a lot of executive types in particular, it's the easiest place to start. So by the time this episode comes out, I probably will have a solo episode already out about problem solution stories. That's one I've got in the docket. But I find, like, with my clients, if they're really struggling to find anecdotes or case study examples for the problem they solve, that's usually just where I start. Is I just say, what are the top 5 problems you solve for people? And walk me through how that solution happened. And all of a sudden, they're a storyteller once they walk me through that. And they're showing their audience, whoever it happens to be, that they can manage change, that they can embrace change because they solved a problem. That's a powerful change when you go from problem to solution.
100%. It also is credibility. You've done this
Yes.
in the height of the pandemic. You've done this when you had to work through remote teams. You've done this, in my case, in the middle of a hurricane. You've done this in all kinds of situations, because at the same time you're going through change, the entire ecosystem of the world is changing.
Right.
And so that agility, adaptability, it speaks to you as a leader above and beyond just what's on the job description, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only constant change. It's the only one. So you might as well love it.
Yes.
So I think you've done a great job of being clear about what you have to offer to people, where you are able to help people. But can you share with us a little bit, like, what form that help comes in? Is it one-on-one coaching? Is it courses? Like, how do you teach your clients?
Absolutely. We have 3 different levels of offerings depending on who you are. We factor in, I can't recommend a 4-week program, which is called our 4-week program is called the 30-day blast, to somebody who's been away from the hiring process in another job for 20 years. It's bigger. It's a bigger challenge.
Right.
So we have a 4-week program called the 30-day blast. We have an executive group cohort that is a 6-month program. So they benefit not
Okay.
just from the curriculum that we have in our program, our structured program, but they also get the benefit of watching other people and building out their network that way. And then we also have a final program, that our private shuttle, which is 12 individual coaching sessions that also partner with our group program. So we also have a
Okay.
couple of other coaches on our team. And so we are very, we love what we do, each and every one of us. And we're not the 9-to-5ers. We're not those people, oh yeah, go figure it out. We also have all of this through our portal that we have. We have lifetime ROI and lifetime access to both the skills that they're learning and also the materials and the IP that we share with them when they join.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So I like that you have a small buffet of options for people to choose from
3,
based on their,
just 3.
yeah, 3. Yeah. You don't want to overload people with like
No,
20
just
things,
3.
right?
Yes.
3. That's perfect. I always like to ask every guest if there is a resource that they would recommend to other people outside of, what they do every day, whether that's a book that's been influential for you that you recommend to others, or some other type of resource, anything like that you want to throw out there.
I'm a big nerd, and I'm a huge nerd. I read, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Uh-huh.
For anybody who is in any kind of change, job search or otherwise, I would strongly recommend. It's available both in book and movie format. It's called The Tools by Phil Stutz. I don't know if you're The Tools by Phil Stutz.
Okay.
And it is genius. And I think the thing that resonates so much about Phil Stutz to me is that he broke the paradigm of what most therapists or psychiatrists were all about. In those days and back in the day, it wasn't like there was a million self-help books. And his frustration was that people would get on a couch and they'd just talk about their feelings and then they'd leave. Right? Then they'd leave.
Yes.
And he felt that there was, on many levels, a personal violation. What do you mean I'm going to let this person leave? I'm not going to give them any tools? Like, how could I do that? That's awful. And so these are tools that have been ginormously helpful to me, to my clients. And I feel that as somebody who is working and has a relatively huge responsibility, this is somebody's life, this is somebody's family that's connected, it's their income, it's their dignity, all these factors. I am not invested in just saying, oh yeah, let's just pie in the sky this and just see what happens. I really want to break the paradigm of what it is to be able to have a structured approach. And my mission is really to end career victimization by elevating, accelerating, and celebrating one executive at a time. And so they perform better, and we all are able to see the results faster when there is a framework in place that allows them to be successful.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's a book I haven't heard of. So I'll make sure to throw a link to it in the show notes so that people can go find that as well. And of course, we hadn't even really mentioned, your podcast. We'll make sure there's a link for that too. So people can go hear more of your wonderful advice.
It's a career blast and a half. If you are looking for something that is not going to whitewash or greenwash or just dumb it down, we are there to literally move past the stinky old career advice.
Yeah, I love that. And then as a final thought, where can people find you? I'm assuming, I know LinkedIn because that's where I found you, but are there any other platforms where people need to hunt you down on?
So I do call LinkedIn my third place. So I am there often. I am a near daily content creator. So I take that on as a challenge, as you know, and I work very hard at it. So you can always find me there, and I'd love to meet any of the folks in your audience. And I do have an Instagram, which is Portfolio Rocket.
Okay, yeah, we'll make
Portfolio Rocket, and my website, of course, portfoliorocket.com.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure that those are linked as well. But again, Loren, I really appreciate this conversation because again, like no one ever knows when that transition is always coming for them unless they are intentionally seeking it out. But let's face it, for most people, that's not the story. So I love that you are creating tools and creating conversations around this idea of embracing the change and leveraging that to fill your life with more purpose in your work. I think it's a beautiful story to tell.
Thank you so much. And storytelling is everything, both in your job search, in your career, and in your life. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Loren, thanks again for being here to share your story and how you're empowering others to embrace change in their professional stories. I've linked her podcast in the show notes, as well as her LinkedIn profile and some of the other things that she mentioned, so that you can go follow her. And if you haven't already done so, please leave a 5-star rating and review to help other story-obsessed people find the show. In the meantime, keep sharing your story and lifting up the stories of others, because then we can change the world one story at a time.